Hello, steadfast Taurus. Around July 7 and 8, you may notice that familiar places no longer settle your heart the way they once did. You can be surrounded by the people who helped shape your life, sharing the same conversations and routines, yet quietly sense that something within you has shifted. It isn't that you stopped caring, it's that an inner landscape has been changing for far longer than anyone else has realized, and now that change has become impossible for you to ignore. You still show kindness, you still listen, you still honor responsibilities that have mattered to you for years. But beneath that steady exterior, something has reached a quiet turning point, like roots beneath the earth slowly finding a new direction, long before anyone notices the tree above. This isn't about pushing people away or turning your back on your past. It is the quiet beginning of seeing yourself more honestly than ever before. Today, we're going to explore 7 meaningful reasons why you may feel guided to outgrow an old family dynamic, not because love has disappeared, but because growth sometimes asks us to relate to familiar places in healthier ways. The final reason often leaves people sitting in thoughtful silence, not because it predicts the future, but because it invites them to recognize a truth they've carried inside for years. Before we begin, take one slow breath. If this message resonates with you, share your zodiac sign and your birth date in the comments so your journey can be part of this conversation. Let's begin with reason 7. You were never meant to move through life at someone else's pace. From an early age, you may have sensed that your way of experiencing the world was different, even if you never found the words to explain it. It wasn't because you were distant, unloving, or detached. Your heart simply processed life more slowly, more deeply, and with a quiet patience that often went unnoticed. When others rushed to react, you instinctively paused to understand what was really happening beneath the surface. While conversations moved quickly around you, your thoughts kept searching for meaning instead of easy answers. In noisy moments, you often found yourself longing for silence, not to escape life, but to hear your own inner voice more clearly. That gentle difference may have followed you for years, leaving you with a feeling that was difficult to name. I belong here. And yet, something inside me still feels out of place. Like the earth itself, Taurus rarely walks away without trying everything first. You plant deep roots. You remain loyal to people, traditions, and responsibilities long after others would have given up. Not because staying is easy, but because you genuinely believe that with enough patience, enough understanding, and enough love, things can still grow into something better. That quiet strength, however, can become its own burden. You often hold on while hope remains, even when your heart has begun asking difficult questions. You notice emotions no one speaks about. Old hurts hidden beneath family habits and tensions that everyone else pretends have disappeared. Over time, you carry those unseen weights as though they belong to you, simply because no one ever taught you that compassion and self-sacrifice are not the same thing. Then, almost without realizing it, another change begins. It doesn't arrive in one dramatic decision or one unforgettable conversation. It grows slowly, like rich soil changing after a season of rain. You begin to recognize that some people are still responding to the version of you who always gave in, always kept the peace, and always made room for everyone else's needs before your own. The truth is, you have already begun to change. That transformation hasn't been loud enough for others to notice because Taurus rarely grows through sudden upheaval. It happens during restless nights, in the quiet heaviness you feel before stepping into familiar conversations, and in the moments when you realize you need a deeper breath just to walk through a familiar doorway. Eventually, you begin asking yourself a different question. Am I becoming someone new, or am I finally allowing my true self to emerge? If you've reached this place, be gentle with yourself. You are not moving through life on the wrong rhythm. You are honoring one that has always belonged to you. It is a rhythm that values depth over speed, sincerity over appearances, and steady truth over easy approval. Yet this realization also brings an uncomfortable understanding. Not every environment is able to nurture the person you are becoming. The people around you may genuinely love you, but love and understanding are not always the same experience. Some relationships are comfortable with the version of you that constantly adapts, while finding it harder to embrace the person who is quietly learning to stand on their own ground. As your roots grow deeper into your own truth, you may begin to recognize that some spaces can appreciate your presence without truly making room for who you have become. Some places can feel deeply familiar and still quietly ask you to become someone smaller, just to remain comfortable there. Over time, you may find yourself adjusting your thoughts, your feelings, or even your voice simply to preserve a sense of harmony. If that realization has begun to settle into your heart, Taurus, know that it is only the first layer of a much deeper journey. For someone whose strength is rooted in patience and unwavering loyalty, this isn't simply about having a different personality. It is often the first sign that your inner life has started growing beyond the space that once shaped you. Real change rarely begins the day someone walks away. It begins much earlier, almost too quietly to notice at first. You are still present at family gatherings, you still care, you still listen with kindness, yet something inside you no longer connects in quite the same way. Your love remains, but you begin to recognize how often you've been setting aside your own needs to preserve everyone else's comfort. If this feels familiar, resist the urge to judge yourself too quickly. Feeling different does not mean you become cold, and needing more space does not mean you've stopped loving the people around you. It may simply be the first gentle invitation to recognize that your steady rhythm has always had a purpose. The more honestly you listen to it, the more you'll begin to understand that this growing distance isn't random. It reflects a season of growth that has been unfolding quietly for much longer than you realized. This brings us to another important realization. The deeper your loyalty becomes, the more likely it is to be tested. That isn't necessarily because you've done something wrong. Sometimes it happens because the roles you faithfully carried for years no longer fit the person you're becoming. Families, like old gardens, often grow around familiar patterns, and when one root begins stretching in a new direction, the entire landscape naturally responds. For a long time, you may have been the dependable one, the person who absorbed tension, carried responsibility, and chose peace over personal comfort. Others came to expect your patience because you rarely complained, and your quiet strength became part of the foundation everyone relied upon. Yet when a system grows accustomed to your endless endurance, even small acts of self-respect can feel like unexpected change to those around you. You may notice subtle shifts rather than dramatic conflict. Questions that sound caring may carry an unspoken expectation beneath them. Someone may wonder why you've changed, or why you're setting limits that never existed before. The pressure isn't always direct. More often it arrives through guilt, through reminders of the past, or through the quiet suggestion that keeping everyone happy should still be your responsibility. That tension can be especially painful because your heart genuinely values the people you love. You don't want anyone to mistake your boundaries for rejection or your honesty for ingratitude. Yet your body often tells the truth before your mind fully accepts it. Every time you imagine returning to old patterns, you may feel a heaviness that reminds you how much energy it once took to keep sacrificing parts of yourself. Many people experience this stage as though they have somehow become selfish, when in reality they are simply learning to stop abandoning themselves. As you begin protecting your own well-being, hidden expectations often become easier to see. Responsibilities no one openly discussed, emotional burdens you quietly accepted, and long-standing habits that once felt normal gradually come into clearer focus. This is rarely the season for proving yourself through endless conversations. Taurus often creates the greatest change through consistency rather than confrontation. Like an old oak that remains firmly rooted through changing weather, your quiet steadiness speaks more powerfully than constant explanations ever could. As you remain grounded in your truth, relationships may shift, not because you become harder to love, but because old patterns no longer hold the same power over you. During moments like these, many people experience what feels like gentle spiritual guidance. Increased pressure is not always a sign that you've chosen the wrong path. Sometimes it allows you to distinguish between relationships built on genuine care and those sustained mainly by habit, obligation, or emotional dependence. That clarity can be uncomfortable, but it also creates the space for healthier connections to grow. So, if you find yourself here, remember this, Taurus. Setting boundaries is not an act of betrayal. Saying no to what continually drains your spirit does not make you less loving. It simply restores the balance you've been missing for far too long. When an old environment begins to feel increasingly restrictive, it may not be asking you to surrender once again. It may simply be revealing that your roots have quietly outgrown the soil where they first began. Yet even this is not the deepest layer of your journey, Taurus. There comes a realization that reaches far beneath disappointment, touching something much older and more personal. It is the moment you begin to see that your loyalty has not always been understood in the way you believed it was. That discovery can be painful, but it also opens the door to a more honest relationship with yourself. Reason 5 begins with a quiet shift that many people overlook. It isn't the moment you stop caring, and it certainly isn't the moment you stop loving. It is the moment you stop feeling responsible for explaining every corner of your heart. After years of choosing your words carefully, trying to be fair, gentle, and patient, you slowly recognize that some conversations never move forward because not everyone is listening with the intention of understanding. For a long time, you may have believed that if you could just express yourself more clearly, everything would finally make sense. You revisited the same conversations, questioned your own perspective, and searched for kinder ways to say what had already been said. That persistence reflects one of Taurus's greatest strengths. You rarely give up on people you love, but eventually experience teaches a difficult lesson. Understanding requires willingness from both sides, not just endless effort from one. As that truth settles in, the change happens quietly. You notice that every attempt to explain leaves you more drained instead of more connected. Your body begins responding before your mind fully catches up. Your shoulders grow heavier after familiar conversations. Simple boundaries suddenly feel exhausting to defend. Little by little, you realize that constantly justifying your feelings has become another way of abandoning them. Then one day, almost without planning it, you become quiet. Not because you surrendered, and not because resentment has taken over, but because you've reached the point where silence feels more honest than repeating words that no longer create understanding. There is a difference between giving up and recognizing that some truths no longer need to be argued. This silence is not empty, it is rooted, steady, and deeply intentional. Something remarkable often happens when you stop protecting every version of yourself that others expect to see. The stories people have created about you begin to stand on their own without your constant effort to hold them together. Those who once insisted they simply couldn't understand your changes may gradually reveal that what unsettled them wasn't your growth itself, but the loss of the familiar role you once filled so willingly. Comments that once sounded caring may begin to feel different. Requests made in the name of family or tradition can reveal hidden expectations that were easy to overlook before. Rather than exposing anyone or defending yourself, you simply remain grounded. Like an old oak that no longer bends with every passing wind, your quiet consistency becomes more powerful than another explanation ever could. As you step back from trying to manage everyone's perception, empty spaces begin to appear. They are the spaces once filled by your constant reassurance, your endless patience, and your willingness to carry more than your share. Without realizing it, others are invited to face responsibilities that your loyalty quietly absorbed for years. You don't force that process, you simply stop standing in the way of it. This is also when a more personal grief may rise to the surface. You begin to understand that many people misunderstood your loyalty from the very beginning. They assumed your silence meant agreement. They believed your sacrifices came easily or reflected obligation rather than choice. What they rarely saw were the countless moments you wrestled with yourself before deciding, once again, to stay patient for the sake of peace. If this is where you find yourself, remember that choosing silence is not the same as avoiding the truth. Sometimes it is the clearest expression of self-respect. You no longer need to repeat your story for those who have already decided what they wish to believe. You no longer have to prove that your pain was real before allowing yourself to heal. In time, truth has a quiet way of standing on its own without demanding constant defense. As this season unfolds, relationships built mainly on habit or convenience may begin to feel less secure, while those rooted in genuine mutual respect often become easier to recognize. The circle around you may grow smaller, but it also becomes more honest. That clarity prepares you for the next stage of your journey, because reason 4 explores a different challenge altogether. There is a unique kind of ache that comes when you are misunderstood and no longer feel compelled to correct every assumption. Earlier in your life, you may have explained every detail, softened every sentence, and questioned yourself before questioning anyone else. Now, however, another realization begins to take root. Sometimes people hold on to a version of your story because it protects the version of themselves they are most comfortable seeing. When you stop participating in that pattern, you naturally become harder to categorize. Some may describe you as distant, stubborn, or changed simply because your boundaries no longer match the role they expected you to play. The deepest hurt isn't necessarily criticism itself. It is recognizing that people who once knew you well may continue relating to a version of you that no longer exists. And here you arrive at an important crossroads. You can return to explaining in hopes of preserving an image that no longer feels authentic, or you can accept that growth sometimes means allowing old perceptions to fade on their own. For Taurus, this choice is rarely made through dramatic declarations. It happens quietly, one steady step at a time, as you decide that living truthfully matters more than remaining perfectly understood. This is where another kind of strength begins to emerge, Taurus. You stop feeling responsible for convincing everyone that your choices make sense. Not because you stopped caring, but because you realize that genuine understanding cannot be forced. When someone truly wants to know your heart, they ask with openness instead of expecting you to defend it. The need to correct every misunderstanding begins to fade. You become less afraid of disappointing others when honoring your own boundaries, and less willing to trade your truth for the comfort of an old role. That quietness isn't weakness, it is the steady confidence of deep roots that no longer need to prove where they belong. When you stop reacting to every opinion, time begins revealing what endless explanations once concealed. Those who genuinely value you move closer with patience and curiosity. Others drift away, not because you become difficult, but because the relationship depended more on your compliance than on mutual understanding. By protecting your energy instead of constantly defending yourself, you begin to see which connections can truly grow. A quieter kind of maturity also takes root. Your peace no longer depends on being validated or fully understood. Some misunderstandings simply need time, not another conversation. Like muddy water settling on its own, clarity often appears when you stop stirring it. Crossing this threshold isn't easy because it asks you to accept that some people will continue seeing an older version of you, yet this is also where freedom begins. You become less guided by other people's expectations and more by your own inner compass. Healthy boundaries no longer feel like guilt, they feel like honesty. Still, another lesson waits ahead. After you stop explaining yourself, some people begin to underestimate you, not because you become less, but because you stopped proving your worth. That is where reason 3 begins. Being underestimated rarely arrives through open conflict. It appears in passing remarks, dismissive looks, or assumptions that your silence means weakness. In reality, your silence has become observation. You notice the patterns beneath people's words and give yourself space to decide where your energy truly belongs instead of reacting to every moment. Your strength becomes quieter but deeper. Rather than giving yourself away without measure, you begin investing your time, trust, and heart where they feel safe. Outwardly, little seems different, but inwardly, you are rebuilding your foundation. You naturally begin asking who remains when you stop carrying everyone else's burdens, and which relationships are rooted in mutual respect instead of silent sacrifice. Some may believe you become less capable because you're no longer explaining every decision. What they cannot see is that Taurus rarely rebuilds life in public. Like a field preparing beneath winter soil, your greatest growth happens long before anyone notices it. You let your actions speak where words once carried the weight. Without drama or confrontation, you quietly step away from roles that required endless self-sacrifice. Being underestimated becomes an unexpected teacher, helping you release the need for outside approval and trust your own inner authority. As this transformation unfolds, you begin choosing environments where your values and quiet strength can exist without constant compromise. It happens gradually, but it changes every step that follows. Even then, one final lesson remains. After learning to stand quietly in your truth, life asks you to release something even more difficult. The role you've carried with unwavering devotion for years. That is where reason too begins. Some moments change your life without making any noise. A quiet realization settles into your heart. If you continue living exactly as you always have, you may slowly lose yourself. Not because your love was lacking, but because you've sacrificed yourself for far longer than your spirit was ever meant to endure. For many Taurus souls, sacrifice has always happened in silence, in the moments no one noticed, the evenings you carried emotional weight alone, and the hope that if you waited just a little longer or gave a little more, everything would finally find its balance. Yet there is one truth that asks even more of you, Taurus, because it cannot be understood through logic alone. It has to be felt. There comes a point when you realize that not every sacrifice is noticed, and not every quiet act of love is received the way you hoped. You begin to feel it not through your thoughts, but through your body, as if something inside you has grown tired in a way that rest alone cannot heal. Ordinary days leave you drained. Familiar places no longer offer the comfort they once did, and conversations that used to feel natural leave an unexpected emptiness behind. It isn't that you stopped caring. Your spirit has simply reached the point where it can no longer thrive by sacrificing itself to keep everything else unchanged. This is the quiet crossroads that changes everything. You face a deeply personal choice. Continue sacrificing yourself to preserve a role that no longer reflects who you are, or accept the temporary pain of living more honestly. One path slowly asks you to disappear. The other allows you to remain whole. Letting go does not mean loving people less. It means no longer measuring your worth by how much you can endure. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours, and without dramatic confrontations, your life begins changing from the inside out. There is grief in this process, and it deserves to be honored. You may mourn the hopes you carried for so long, but this pain no longer pulls you away from yourself. Instead, it gently brings you back. For the first time in a long while, you stand beside your own heart instead of asking it to wait a little longer. Others may think you've lost something, but they cannot see what is happening beneath the surface. You are reclaiming energy that has been scattered for years, and old responsibilities begin falling away. Solitude no longer feels like loneliness. It becomes the place where your own voice is finally clear and your peace grows because you are no longer living against your own nature. This is where the final chapter begins. Letting go is not an ending. Like a field resting after harvest, it creates space for a new season of growth. Reason 1 is not about being chosen above others. It is about recognizing what has quietly been true all along. One day, a simple clarity settles within you. You realize you can no longer return to the version of yourself that survived by ignoring your own needs. Not because you are better than anyone else, but because you had become honest enough to know what no longer fits. True to your nature, Taurus rarely leaves impulsively. You reflect, remain patient, and give every possibility the chance to grow before accepting that a chapter has run its course. When this clarity arrives, it comes from countless quiet seasons spent listening to your own heart. By releasing the identity built on endless endurance, you create room for a healthier way of living. Whether you call it faith, intuition, or deep self-awareness, it feels like standing on steady ground again. You no longer seek permission to become yourself. Perhaps your greatest purpose is not escaping your past, but transforming what it taught you. The experiences that once taught you how to survive now teach you how to build healthier relationships, stronger boundaries, and a life where love no longer requires self-erasure. You don't have to force this transformation or wait until you feel completely ready. Growth asks only for honesty. As you continue forward, you will naturally find people who value your authentic presence. Relationships that don't ask you to become smaller, and places where your steady nature is truly appreciated. This is not a reward for hardship. It is the natural result of living in alignment with who you have become. And if your heart feels unexpectedly calm, if the need to defend yourself has begun to fade, take it as a quiet sign that a new chapter has begun, not because anyone else was entirely wrong, or because you were entirely right, but because your journey is leading you toward a life that finally supports the person you are becoming. Dear Taurus, if you stayed with this message until now, you may already recognize that none of these reflections are entirely new to you. They are simply giving words to feelings you've carried for much longer than you may have admitted. Long before today, there were quiet moments when you sensed your life was beginning to move at a different pace. You noticed it when familiar roles no longer fit as comfortably, when patience slowly turned into discernment, and when your heart began asking for something more honest than endurance alone. You saw it in the years you remained loyal long after others might have walked away. You felt it when you stopped explaining every choice, accepted that not everyone would understand your growth, and discovered that being underestimated did not have to define your future. None of those moments happened by accident. Together, they became the gentle turning points that led you here. These 7 reflections were never meant to persuade you to leave anyone behind. Their purpose has always been to help you remember something that may have been buried beneath years of responsibility and quiet sacrifice. You were never meant to spend your life carrying every burden simply because you were strong enough to do so. You were never meant to measure your worth by how much of yourself you could give away. Like the earth itself, your strength has always moved at its own pace. It is steady without becoming rigid, deep without losing its balance, and patient without forgetting its own needs. That quiet rhythm has never been a weakness. It has been one of your greatest gifts, asking only that you trust it enough to let it guide your next season of growth. Over time, your understanding of loyalty has begun to change. Once, loyalty may have meant staying no matter the cost. Now it begins to include honesty with yourself as well. Your understanding of love has also deepened. Love no longer asks you to disappear inside someone else's expectations. Instead, it invites you to care for others while remaining firmly rooted in your own truth. Even your silence has taken on a different meaning. It is no longer the silence that keeps peace by hiding your heart. It has become the silence that protects what is genuine until it can grow naturally, like roots strengthening beneath the soil before new branches appear. Much of your transformation has happened when no one else could see it. This is why this chapter is better understood as a completion rather than an ending. A long season of endurance has done its work. The identity that once carried every responsibility without question has gently given way to someone who can stand with quiet confidence, guided by values instead of obligation. Growth has not erased your compassion. It has simply taught it healthier boundaries. As you move forward, you no longer need permission to become more fully yourself. You don't have to justify why your priorities have changed or explain why certain paths no longer feel right. Some roads simply become too narrow for the person you have grown into, and recognizing that is not failure. It is part of living honestly. So if there is one promise you carry from this moment, let it be a quiet one made only to yourself. Let it settle as naturally as roots finding deeper soil after gentle rain. I choose authenticity over performance. I choose peace over obligations that slowly diminish my spirit. I choose a life where purpose grows alongside compassion and where love no longer requires me to lose myself. You don't need to say those words for anyone else's approval. They exist only to remind you of the direction your heart has already begun to follow. And as you continue walking, each step becomes a little steadier, not because every answer is already known, but because you have learned to trust the quiet wisdom that has been guiding you all along. From here, the path ahead may still unfold one season at a time, yet it is no longer shaped by old expectations. It is shaped by the person you are becoming, with every step planted on ground that truly supports your growth.